First of all, I think Singapore government has had the experience of engaging the private sector to help develop in its economic development as well as urbanization. For the private and the public sectors to work together and work effectively, I think there must be few principles that has to be shared with. The first and foremost is alignment of interest and objective, right? And then the second thing is about complementing and leveraging on each other's, both parties' capabilities and experience, expertise. And the third point is during the execution, there must be a lot of mutual trust, and where needed to be some flexibility to be built in to adjust maybe needed changes or the changing environment or certain things has evolved that need to be renegotiated. But of course with some basic principle. Last but not least is the risk sharing and responsibility sharing. Let me elaborate all these 4 points. First is alignment of interest. I remember in Singapore in the old days, government started by getting private sector to tender for procurement project, be it needed to procure either work to be done or services to be delivered. And in this respect, the interest must be aligned. And later on, government go into more ambitious kind of outsourcing where private sector will undertake a project from the initial capital investment, financing, operating and maintenance. For example, the desalination plants and the treatment plant, the new water. And then if you elaborate a little bit more about how Singapore as a private sector company, in my experience, venture overseas, then that even also have the same kind of principle, which I will elaborate later on. But basically, the first point is alignment of interest. For government, they want to make sure that the service in terms of quality and quantities and timeliness are delivered to the citizens. And for the private sectors, they want to make sure that they do get reasonable investment return. So these two interests must be aligned. And it can be aligned, because government can tap on private sector's innovation to cut costs and commercial capabilities to save cost, and also efficiency in implementation. And as to the risk-sharing part, it's very much about, for private sector, they would not want to take any unforeseen and not going to be manageable kind of political risk. So government, if you want the private sectors to cooperate successfully and implement the project successfully, which mind you, will take quite a few years. It's not just a one short kind of a transaction. It's going to be last for maybe 10, 20 years kind of a project. Then you must remove the political and regulatory risk from the private sector. For example, water prices, electricity prices, all this. Particularly water prices, for example, in Singapore case, then government have to be the sole taker from the private sector. So the government bear the responsibility of paying the private sector how much they want the private sector to deliver per cubic meter of water, and shield the private sector away from potential political decision as to how water tariff should be charged to the citizen, which often may have to be other broader political consideration and has regulatory risks. So that has to be worked into the agreement contract. So that is what I meant. Because don't forget, ultimately, government is still responsible for the services to be rendered to the public. Even though some of these projects, when you implement it, the ownership of the facilities and assets belong to the private sector. So in many sense, from the earlier years when government built, for example, the HDB town, government effectively made use of competitive bidding to engage contractor to build all the HDB flat. But initially, and I think still to a certain extent right now, government are responsible for the overall planning of the township in Singapore. And so government have long range planning, take into account the need of the citizen, therefore you build in neighborhood center, F&B facility like hawker center, wet market, including logistic considerations like shelter to link the public housings to the bus stops, so and so forth, and the public amenity. Therefore, it is very important for working relationship to be long-lasting, sustainable, and efficiently and effectively implemented. These are the few things that has to be gel in and coordinate and implement successfully. Last but not least is, of course, any project you are talking about people. So the people who execute the project must be with integrity. Fortunately, in Singapore, our government is very, very upright. They are transparent. Civil servants are not corrupted, and therefore, every sense of contract that you give the private sector can deliver to the last dollar of that value. No leakages, if you know what I mean. And for private sector, they must also have good people to execute the project. They must have the capability to undertake the project. They shouldn't pretend or think that they have the capability, but actually they may not be able to execute the project to its higher standard the government expected. So these two must be matched closely. So that is why I think important. Government always call for competitive bidding. Take, for example, a new water plant. What government asks is the private sector. For government, the tender spec is something like, I want a new water plant to be built of this capacity. And government commitment is, for the next, once you build it in operational, for the next, say, 20 years or 30 years, government will buy water from the private company, right? And guarantee you take or pay kind of contract. I guarantee you every day I need so many cubic feet of water. But you as a private sector, you must ensure the quality of water is of this kind of standard. You know, water quality can spell out in all kind of technical standard in terms of the content of oxygen, whatever it is, that has to be spelled out. In terms of guarantee of delivery, when I ask you for X cubic meter a day, an hour, you have to deliver. If you don't deliver up to the standard and promptly deliver the quantity that I needed, you will be penalized. It's all built into the contract. Then based on this very clear-cut tendering spec, the private sector tender for the project. So the private sector, each based on their own capability. Some company may have in-house capability in, say, filtration techniques, or some company may have better able to source for financing. That means their cost of financing is cheaper. Based on the various capability, they will all submit their bid. What their bid comprises is that, okay, I shall comply with all your technical requirement and all your volume and quality requirement, and I want to charge you X dollar per cubic meter. That's it. So everybody will compete on your cost delivery to us. It's a bit like, to the private sector, it's cost plus. I calculate my total cost plus my expected return of my investment, taking into account the risk. But in Singapore, government is normally not so much of a risk. And they bid based on that basis. And then government, when open tender, they will look at the capability of the private sector who bid for it, and they will award, generally speaking, and most of the time to the lowest tender. Unless the lowest tender doesn't quite qualify. That means government is skeptical about its capability to deliver either the new technology or the committed quantity and quality. So that is how government ensure this kind of thing. That's why I said it is very important that the interest must be aligned. But take example, if you are getting the private sector, you want them to deliver efficient services. But if you say your revenue is based on how much you can charge the public, MRT or bus services, for example, then the private sector is taking the political risk because they can't charge the train fare in accordance to what they think is needed to cover their total cost plus expected rate of return, because it's regulated by government. We all know by now it will create problem. Same with buses. Once I operate as a private sector, let us not forget, in private sector, the main objective is maximizing return. That's it. Private sector is purely profit driven, right? The wider political and public goods is for government to shoulder and to plan. Therefore, it is important that you don't expect or pretend that the public sector can do both things at the same time. That means take care of political need. Oh, I cannot charge too high a fees, but at the same time, bear the whole responsibility of financing costs, maintenance costs, engineering and investment costs. And that will create an imbalance. And once you're imbalance, as a private sector, they have to find other ways and means to earn the money to cover the so-called the subsidized sector. And that will actually work out to be unsustainable in the long run. Say, for example, a bus company, they would not want to run the road when it is economically not viable, because you do a study and find that, oh, this particular road, maybe peak hour, yes, I have X number of passengers, but most of the time, 10 hours of the day, I'm going to have no passengers. So I'm not going to start that road at all. But politically, can you afford to tell that sector of the population that you shall have no buses, or you'll wait for the buses maybe 1 hour, once every 1 hour? Because the private sector will say, I calculated, it doesn't make sense for me to run the buses every 15 minutes or 20 minutes because I will run the losses, right? So how do you balance the two? Is for government to think through, and there's certain thing private sector would not be able to undertake that kind of risk. I take away that risk from him. But I want the private sector to deliver the services according to the standard set and the commitment he made. That's how it can be worked out between private and public sector. Alignment of interest, co-sharing the risk in a very fair manner, political risk, regulatory risk, government to take. But financial risk and other technology risk, the private sector to take. Because they are better able to take it. They know where to find the more cheaper financing maybe, and they know they are always at the technology front if they are the good company, yes. In exporting Singapore's experience in township planning, urbanization, industrial development into overseas economy, there are a few fundamental principles and capability that we must be mindful of. First and foremost is, again, alignment of interest. Does the country need us, and why do they need us? In the very old day, when Indonesia started agreeing for Batam to be used by Singapore to shift some of the labor-intensive industry to Batam, it suits Indonesia because at that time, Batam Island is basically a very small populated fishing village, that's it. So the Jakarta is so far away from them, it's a bit like not so well utilized island. Might as well let Singapore try whether they can stimulate the economy or not. So I need not go into the detail, but today if you go to Batam, you see that Batam is completely transformed. It's quite a bubbling little economy within the Indonesian context. How did we do that? First, we industrialized the place. We built the industrial park. We shifted some of the labor-intensive MNC operation into Batam. We also proactively market for them and bring in other investment. And from there on, with job creation and every related subcontractor having the opportunity to provide the services to the industrial park manufacturers and all this, the local economy will boom, the population will benefit from it, and the associated development follow, be it shopping mall, houses, hotels, F&B, so on and so forth. That is how an economy can develop, from using the industrial park as a stimulus, as a catalyst, and then grow. That experience subsequently we transported to, for example, Vietnam. Vietnam 20 years ago was very much a lower income country, but with big population. Vietnam has very young workforce and relatively long coastline with a lot of land to be developed, to be utilized. So again, Sembcorp as a company, in a way, we are GLC, Sembcorp is a GLC, so we went in, and the government also welcomed us because they want us to bring in job creation. And the way to bring in job, again, is to start with industrialization. It's no different from Singapore in the 1960s days, right, when we became independent. We also encourage a lot of MNC to come here and set up factories, invest, and then create jobs. So we transplanted that more or less in Vietnam also. Again, with the success of the good planning of industrial park and persuading the MNC, be it from America, Europe, Japan in particular, and Japan and Taiwan, and also Korea, they are comfortable with us because we provide them a one-stop service. We provide them a no-hustle kind of manufacturing environment. Once they come in and invest in it, agree to come in, they just need to build the factory, and then on the day it's operational, everything go. Water is properly treated because we have water treatment all laid out nicely. Power is delivered, water is delivered. They don't worry about where am I going to get the power line, where am I going to get the good water, so on and so forth. Even when they want to apply for license, they want to look for labor, we help them to resolve all these problems. So it's like really, emulating Singapore experience at EDB, one-stop services to provide the foreign investor, we do that. We did that in Vietnam. And with the success, the surrounding land area become very valuable, and economic development followed. People are happy, they got job, they got new, in a way, dream to look for. So it was replicated successfully from 1 to 7 now, right? From the Ho Chi Minh City to the central to the north. Similarly in China, you know that we started with Suzhou Industrial Park, then Wuxi. We also have the Nanjing project, the Chengdu project, and government also, as you know, Guangzhou, Knowledge City, Tianjin, Chongqing, all these projects. Again, alignment of interest. What China at that time, in the old days, looked towards us is our ability to do global marketing. And also our advice to them on how to do master plan development and execution of detailed plans. Today, China has actually changed a lot and developed a lot and become very successful. But they still look to us for certain things that they think they still needed Singapore's experience. They don't need you on basic master plan, urbanization plan. They are more than capable to do it. They also don't quite need us to do too much of marketing because they themselves is a magnet to a lot of multinational companies who, if you want expansion, you will just go to China. So they also by now know that China is open up. They're comfortable. A lot of company can go direct to China without having to go through us as a middleman. However, they look to us for example, for globalization connectivity, like the Silk Road project, 一带一路. They still look towards Singapore for, in a way, acting as a platform to link up the ASEAN country on the logistic aspect, on the financing aspect, on the media, and on the technology. So this, in a way, shows that for the relationship to work, for the partnership to work, the interest must be aligned all the time. And if the capability and expertise of the respective partner has changed in accordance to the time trend and advancement in respective economy and people and talent capability, that relationship has to change also. You cannot stick to the old kind of thinking, then it won't work. It will not be sustainable. Last but not least is mutual trust. And so far, Singapore company and Singapore government, we pride ourselves for being trustworthy because of our principle of integrity, non-corrupted kind of working attitude and practice. Last but not least is quality and standard. And quality and standard sometimes can be very subtle. One may think that construction, why can't I also know how to do it. I don't need you to teach me. But however, it is on the detail quality. Like when the foundation is soft, how much must you throw it in to make the foundation solid, meet the standard? Or do you say, now nah, cover up, nobody can see anyway? Or maybe earthquake only come once in 20 years, so it doesn't matter, you know. But we normally would prefer that we set it right up front, you know, and build something solid that can last, hopefully, forever and ever. But I think that's a difference. And that is where there's a lot of mutual learning also. We learn quite a lot from our partner. The partner also learn quite a lot from us. And with mutual learning, mutual respect, mutual trust, the relationship will go a long way. The format of cooperation may change as we progress, but the relationship is there. Then overseas, do we face challenges? Yes, we do. Because don't forget, when you go and invest in a particular country, you have to choose a location. And the point is that when you first went in and choose the location, at that point in time, it may suit the local government. It also may suit very well the central government's desire to say, I want to develop this place, so you are welcome. The local government say, I'd like you to come here, and in particularly this particular area. But let us not be naive. In country overseas, as big as China, Indonesia, or elsewhere, sometimes the political interests shift. And once it shifts, then your project may not get the same kind of attention, may not get the same kind of cooperation. And that is where you have a problem. So quite often we find that the local people we deal with, because as I said again, in any project and partnership, it is the people that is working on the project that counts. So you may be dealing with this set of government officials who are used to be very nice, very understanding, and whatever it is. Then you find that they shifted, they changed. Then another set come in who may not see eye to eye with you or who have the other agenda, and then you are in trouble. Right? So sometimes it's short-term, they are short-term perspective versus our long-term perspective. For them, change of local government is quite common within few years, especially if the party side did the project well and get noticed and get promoted, then you have to deal with another set of people. So that is always the risk that you have to take, the change in the people and therefore the change in thinking and the attitude of cooperation. Having said that, if the project is fundamentally sound in the sense that the relationship, the agreement, the investment parameters and the delivery of outcome and end product makes sense and is sustainable, then it can withstand all kind of challenges. Just that you may have to spend a bit more time handling a bit of a hiccup and problem, but the fundamental does not change. So sooner or later, the new set of people also realize that it's beneficial for them also. So it's no point abandoning the project. But if you first negotiated it and it's completely lopsided, that means one party benefited lots more from the other party, then for sure you're going to have problem when the people changes, the relationship changes. So that is basic fundamental challenges that we have to bear in mind.
So both sides must be fair?
Both sides must be fair, yeah, and both sides must benefit from the partnership and the cooperation, yeah, right. Then of course for private sector there are other elements to consider like currency rates and all this, but all these normally as a private company they would have factored it in when they do the investment decision, right. Interesting question, because you look at the changes in the world, is all this disruption and the AI, and the world is moving very fast into wanted to set the green standards, zero emission kind of car and driverless car share services, when you can share bicycle, I don't see why can't you share the car, especially if it's going to be driven by, it's driverless car anyway, so why you need to own the car. But closer to home, we're in the ASEAN region, let us not forget that although our ASEAN, the neighborhood and the countries have in a way started a little bit slower, but they are now moving towards economic development in a much more, I would say, politically quite stable, particularly for some country, and also a much more consistent kind of a thinking. Everybody look towards China grow positively, and Indonesia, once the political stability continue, with people wanted to always improve on their standard of living, there will be lots more opportunity for Singapore and Singapore company to consider how best we could, in a way, contribute our expertise and experience. In return, allow company to open the market wider beyond Singapore. Singapore is very small. The market size is tiny, But with our expertise and with our own ability to finance and invest, how do we leverage on their urbanization plan, on their wish to also develop sustainable city, and on their infrastructure development. So these are areas that we should pay close attention to. Indonesia, Myanmar opening up, Cambodia, not to forget about Vietnam continue to offer quite good opportunity, and Philippines, Thailand, although they are of different league, but I'm sure there will always be a pocket of opportunity for Singapore company to look into and contribute our know-how and our global networking kind of a capability. Of course, as time go by, these countries, their people, their talent, their politicians, all would have, in a way, higher expectation of what they want the foreign investment to be able to do. So we must not be complacent. We must not always think that we are ahead of people. In fact, to a certain extent, certain area, we may not be as, in a way, as advanced and as developed as other countries. So we need to catch up ourselves. An area that actually is very, very much, I think, needed is in, I would say, the early childhood education, which Singapore is trying to step out, but I think it is also opportunity for overseas investment. Only question is that we ourselves have not quite built up to the full extent. Although we have some company that already make an inroad into places like Indonesia and even China. You know, Eaton House is one example, and Kids Learning, whoever it is, because we have the kind of a curriculum, the system to teach the children. Then for more adult education, or what I call the full-time students in the schooling age, Singapore is attracting also quite a lot of overseas students to Singapore. So we can be an education hub. Our universities, our colleges quite often have about around 40 plus and minor percentage of international students, which allow us to, in a way, offer the services to the neighborhood young people. It also allow our students to have this fertilization of idea, learning from their fellow students, different culture, different language, different thinking. It's an enrichment kind of experience that you enrich your learning and make you be more open-minded. It's beneficial. Of course, as we all know, all education, especially schools, are in a way quite heavily subsidized by government, university also. So we have to be mindful about using our national resources efficiently. Yeah. The Sichuan-Singapore project actually was located in Chengdu. Again, it's alignment of interest because the Chengdu government, with the strong support by the Sichuan provincial government, they wanted to leverage on Singapore's experience to develop a holistic township, integrated urbanization development for high technology and innovation. So Chengdu was selected and a location in the Tianfu Xingji was located. So at that time, the government wanted to grow the economy and to move into high technology and innovation. We brought them to see like one-off operations and then the A-star facilities, whatever it is, they like what they see, and they really hope that they could also go on to that path. So it's alignment of interest and capability. They also look forward to us to do a comprehensive master plan and co-investment to develop the town. And then when we, together with them, design the master plan, the town, we make sure that it is a place that is conducive, no need to work there, but also to live there and to play there, you know. And on top of it, must comply with the ecosystem and green standard, where it is very much a desire by all city government. So for example, we built an interesting lake there to soften the whole areas and to provide greenery and nice environment to beautify the place. At the same time, we implemented a lot of course in consultation with them, implemented a lot of high energy efficient kind of infrastructure into the township. So it is a win-win, and it enables us to share our experiences and also to open a market for our company to go in. That was what happened. Actually, you may be surprised, but nowadays the Chinese government official, they are very mindful of long-term strategic direction, and they are also paying a lot of attention on the green environment, the quality of air, water. In fact, unlike in the old days when they are more eager to generate economy in terms of getting more money, they are less, to them nowadays it's like less urgency for that, because they are relatively developed already. They don't really need that particular push for you to pull in more factory to generate job. In fact, they always emphasize they want only high quality kind of industry. They no longer want labor intensive industry. They want you to be able to persuade the top-notch research, innovation to come. So it is a changing attitude and a upgrading of their expectation. Then our problem sometimes is to try to get them to understand that some of these companies may still hesitant to come because of the intellectual property right issue. Because sometimes in China, you may end up having a little bit more problem. Yeah. So again, you have to align a bit of your interest, and you have to negotiate and make sure that some of these problems can be resolved. Last but not least, you look at today's world, a lot of the very successful and innovative company actually are Chinese company. But sometimes the local officials still talk about, why don't you get the foreign overseas company to come? And we have to tell them that if you talk about a high-tech, innovative company, it is the Chinese company. So it took a while for them to finally understand it and realize it, and in fact now it worked the other way around. And not only we try to get all these successful Chinese companies to come to the park, we help them to go outside China as well, 走出去. So it becomes a mutual benefit again. Then the relationship and the partnership can prolong. Yeah. So because they realize that, hey, you have capability to also go other country and sell the services, and I can leverage on you. Just like in the old day, you managed to get all the foreign MNC to come to China, to come to Vietnam. So why don't I just leverage on you to also go some other places? So the relationship shifted a little bit in terms of nature, but it can be continued and it can be sustained, right? It is still the partnership, just the nature of cooperation and the relationship may have shifted a bit, but nonetheless, both parties still see the benefit of working together. Just that working together may be in a different sense, right? Again here, from the day one, we know that the Jiangxingzhou Island in Nanjing is a very important and strategic island for China. And it is what they call a AA grade kind of island where they want to preserve the ecology. The island started originally with a lot of grape growing industry, that means growing grapes. And the people from mainland actually go there to taste the grape and have a 农村生活, that kind of experience the village life. So when we design it, we still preserve that. It's a 50-50 kind of a thing. 50% only develop 50% of the island, and 50% land are reserved for eco-agriculture kind of industry. Today, if you go to see the island, it is very well developed because government, seeing that the interests are aligned and continue to have very great interest to want to see the success of this project, they themselves put in a lot of effort to do the basic infrastructure. So the cooperative spirit is there. So again here, in any partnership, be it between government and private sector, or a foreign country and a local government, there must be alignment of interest, objective, mutual trust, and capability sharing and complementary of capability in order to sustain the relationship. Last but not least is the people who execute it must continue to deliver the expectation of both parties. So to start with, when we first decided on how to develop the island, we have this 50-50 kind of guideline to the master plan consultant that we only want 50% of the land to be developed. The other 50% must be preserved. Now, as to which part of the land to be preserved and how it's being preserved, we give a lot of leeway for the consultant who must understand the local, the environment, to propose it. But basically, if you imagine it, you are like not developing the island to the full maximum crop ratio, so to speak. You are conscientiously keep a lot of greenery to meet up with the ecological kind of preservation, right? Then next is that when the buildings are being built, we impose a lot of green standards and zero emission kind of requirement into the design of the building and the infrastructure kind of a development and investment. Yeah. Last but not least, the type of industry that we try to market and promote to come into the island definitely cannot be pollutive, and not even the basic kind of labor-intensive industry, not at all. It's all into the high-tech research and green environmental kind of industry. Yeah. So it is a very high-grade kind of a development. Yeah. And that is why the island is developed into a very unique kind of places, and the land price speak for itself. Eco Island on Jiangxingzhou, the local people, unlike other projects where they have to be relocated elsewhere, for this project they all are given houses within the island itself, so that they can also enjoy the end result and the fruits of the development. And many of them actually do benefit and do enjoy and appreciate of the new living standard and environment. Yeah, of course, maybe for the older generation, they may still feel nostalgia about the farmland and that kind of a thing. But for the younger generation, they very much appreciated the cleaner environment, higher standard of living, and most importantly, the new job that are made available for them. Not many young people want to continue to be the farmer, for example, right? So we experience this in Vietnam also. It is always the younger generation that look forward to a transformation of economy, to a change in their whole lifestyle and their living, and the urbanization.